come August 1st, they're going to be put in a position where they're going to find out who really has the power, who really has the control, who really runs the company. And that's a game that they're going to play, and they're going to lose that game.
Welcome to All That's Left, a podcast from Left Voice. My name is Odin. On today's episode, we're returning to the possible strike at UPS. Back in May, we spoke to a warehouse worker who told us all about the Teamsters' main demands and what's at stake. I'll link to that episode in the show notes, and I really recommend checking it out also. But things have really heated up in the last week. So to give a quick update, during contract negotiations, the Teamsters did win a few important demands from UPS, like ending the two-tier system among drivers. They secured Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a holiday, installing AC in new trucks, notably not in the old trucks, so the ones that are in use every single day right now. But negotiations between UPS and the Teamsters collapsed in the early morning hours of July 5th because the company continues to refuse some of the workers' main demands, like part-time workers getting equality with full-time workers and having a guaranteed 3.5-hour workday. Part-time workers actually make up the majority of the UPS workforce. And so, with the collapse of these contract negotiations, an August 1st strike is looking more likely. Just as a reminder of what's at stake here, this would mean over 340,000 UPS Teamster members going on strike. UPS moves 6% of the US GDP and 3% of the world's GDP every single day. So for that reason, a strike at UPS would be a huge deal. It would have enormous consequences. It would be a huge blow to the company and to the bosses whose massive profits are made off the backs of all of these workers. And it could also inspire millions of workers across other sectors. So winning a strong contract at UPS could help to revitalize the labor movement. On today's episode, Left Voice member Ben Douglas interviews Richard Hooker, who is now the principal officer of Local 623. Ben worked at UPS for 2 years before getting wrongly terminated for an off-the-clock union rally at his workplace. His case is currently being appealed to the NLRB. Richard is an outspoken advocate for equality and workers' rights. And in this interview with Ben, Richard talks about the likely UPS strike, organizing part-time workers, the need for a working-class political party. As he points out, neither Democrats nor Republicans are friends of labor. He also discusses the importance of workers taking up the fight for Black lives and other struggles. And they discuss many, many more super important topics. A quick note about some of the terminology that Ben and Richard use in this episode. They refer to so-called 22-4s, which are the second-tier delivery drivers who do the same job as other drivers, but with lesser pay and with fewer rights. That is the category that will presumably be eliminated in a new contract. They also mention the IBT, which stands for the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. This episode is originally from a video interview between Ben and Richard, so if you'd prefer to watch it on YouTube, check out the show notes for the link. But if you, like me, are a podcast lover, then just keep listening right here. Make sure to check out the show notes for more information and articles about this important struggle at UPS. Finally, as always, Left Voice is completely volunteer-run, and so is this podcast. So if you'd like to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/leftvoice. Share this podcast with your friends and comrades. Leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Check out our website, leftvoice.org, and of course, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where you can find us under the handle @left_voice. Enjoy the episode.
A Teamster strike against UPS would be one of the biggest labor actions in US history. What's your thoughts on where the struggle is going, like the state of the negotiations, and what do you see happening next in the next 2, 3 weeks?
Well, first, thank you for having me, and I appreciate this opportunity to tell the story of the working family. Right. So this struggle has been going on for a very long time. We started negotiations with UPS at the very beginning of the year, around about springtime, and here we are. There's still no agreements. We have the supplements are done, but the national is not done, and so we're just waiting for that. And the way I feel about it is, if UPS was really serious about getting something done, then we would have something really to show our members by now. The CEO, she claims that we're not far apart on issues, as many of us heard at her investment call. She said it very loud and clear that we're not very far apart, which we are though, because if we were not far apart, then we would have a deal. So yesterday, like you mentioned earlier, both sides got up from the table. The other side is blaming the other side. At this point, who cares, right? August 1st is the deadline. Everybody knows that. If there's not an agreement, then we're going to be on the side of the road. And that's totally up to UPS. It's not up to us, it's up to them. We made this company the most profitable it has ever been in their history. Just think about that. UPS has been around for over 100 years. And during that time, they have never been as profitable as they are now. And that's solely on the backs of Teamsters. No other reason. There's not nothing that they manufacture. There's nothing that they make. You can't go to the store and pick up something that they provide. It's all based on what the Teamsters do. And now, I think more than ever, our members are more engaged and involved because they realize that because of what happened during the height of the pandemic. Listen, the country was shut down. The only people that were able to work, UPS workers, warehouse people, doctors, nurses, essential workers, as they called us, right? Heroes, right? Now, when it comes down to the contract, those adjectives went away. Now we're disposable. Oh, we don't need you. You're not worth the money that we're talking about across the table. You're not worth the protections that you want. You're not worth those things. But during the pandemic, man, we saved America, right? We all these things. I mean, all in the news. Keep that same energy at the negotiating table. If they have done that, we would be done by now. But UPS is cocky, they're arrogant, they believe in bully boy tactics, and now they're faced with the ultimatum. Give the contract we want, demand and deserve, or come August 1st, we'll be on the side of the road and those profits will be gone in no time.
You mentioned the pandemic as something that impacted the workforce. When I was a driver trainee, a 22-4 trainee, I remember going into the warehouse for the pre shift meetings, and we'd basically be packed. There'd be about 100 drivers standing almost shoulder to shoulder. And I remember, in my facility, there was no temperature checks, there was no real social distancing. And it always struck me, and I think it struck a lot of coworkers, as a dangerous situation that was really never fully addressed. What was your experience and the experience of some of your members in Philadelphia during the pandemic? Did you have workers that got sick? Did you have people that passed away? Were you able to enforce some of the safety standards?
When the pandemic first kicked off, we followed the guidelines of the CDC and those health organizations, right? And so what we wanted was a UPS to do the same thing. They wouldn't do it. So I kept reaching out to the labor manager at the time to try to get them to understand, hey, these are issues that our members are having. These are issues that we as the local are having. They need to be addressed. They would not fix them. So after some time, I had to go to the news, and we went on every news outlet we could to expose UPS for how they treated our members during the height of the COVID pandemic. Trash everywhere, no running water, Man, it was a mess in there. It wasn't until we exposed them nationally on TV where they wanted to sit down and do the right thing. And we had, that we know of, over 600 cases of people catching COVID.
Wow.
That's just that we know of.
Just in your
Our air
local.
Right. Our airport building is, like I said, the second largest air hub in the country, the largest on the East Coast. So there's a lot of people in that building. No 6 feet distancing, none, no one person in the truck. They did not care. All they cared about was getting that product out. And they didn't care if you died while you were delivering. They didn't care if you died while you were unloading. They didn't care if you had COVID. Now, they said the right thing to the public, but behind closed doors, they didn't care. And everybody knew they didn't care. And that's why we kept pushing, because we wanted to show them, man, you guys do not care about our members at all. All you care about is these packages. It wasn't until they started getting COVID where it started hitting them like, oh, this thing is real. Well, it was real when our members were catching it. It was real for their families when they were catching it. But it wasn't until they started catching it where we got to do something. So yeah, it was crazy, man, and we got through it. Because that's what Teamsters do, man. We get through everything. There's
Sure.
nothing that can stop Teamsters. Pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it. We can get through anything as Teamsters. And
That's
we've
some
proven that
Teamster
time and
pride right
time again.
there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and man, and then so man, it was rough, man. But again, we got through it. We kept the country running. So it was rough though, man, because like you said, a lot of people passed away. A lot of people caught it. Our members, I remember this story very vividly. One of my members said that they had to take their clothes off, stay in the garage because they didn't want to go in, see their family, and possibly expose them to what could have been out there while they were delivering. Man, and that hit me hard, man, because we're sacrificing for this company, sacrificing for America. Can't see my spouse, can't see my kids. I'm out here in this garage because I don't want to expose them to what could be out there. But if I don't go to work, I could be fired. Just think about that. UPS just didn't care. All they cared about is those profits, man. That's all they care about.
And I heard stories through the grapevine of coworkers that knew that they were positive with COVID and would come into work because they were afraid of retaliation. They were afraid of getting in trouble. They didn't have any more sick days. And, so they did what they felt they had to do. The policies of the company, like you're saying, they don't care. They did not care about the safety. I think a lot of the issues in the strike are contractual and about money and about vacations and about a whole bunch of things, 22 4s. But I think it's also touches on issues of basic respect and and who has power, who has power in the workplace.
Right,
Does management have all the power, or do workers have some of the power as well?
right. And that's what this, like you said, that's what the baseline of this fight is for. UPS does not want to give up that control that they feel that they have. Who are we to threaten that control? Who are we to threaten that power that they seem to believe that they have? We're just truck drivers. We're just preloaders. We're just sorters. We're not these executives making all this millions and millions of dollars. And that's the way they view us as. That's why the harassment and the retaliation, and the intimidation, and that hostile work environment is so prevalent in this culture because they feed off that. They feed off of them being these bosses and telling you whatever. And if you don't do what I say, I can take your job. They get thrills off of that, right? But now with this contract and the engagement and the pushback that we're seeing from our members, they don't like that at all. That's why they become more aggressive in that discipline. That's why they're watching our drivers more. They're watching our preloaders more, watching our members more. Because who are these people to tell us that they want more? Who are they to demand more? Just be lucky that you have a job, is what they're thinking.
Right.
When it should be, just be lucky you have a company. Just be lucky we showing up to work. Just be lucky that we care much, about our families, that we want to show up to work every day. Just be glad that we care. Because if we didn't care, we wouldn't show up to work, make you all these profits. But again, come August 1st, they're going to be put in a position where they're going to find out who really has the power, who really has the control, who really runs the company. And that's a game that they're going to play, and they're going to lose that game. But it's totally up to them.
And I wanted to pivot a little bit and ask you about how you've come to be kind of an outspoken labor leader. In previous interviews, you've touched on things like betrayal or the sellout or the subpar agreement of rail workers.
Yeah.
Last year, you've talked about things like the need for a working class party and the way in which both the Democratic Party and the Republicans serve the rich. You've sort of become someone that speaks out on some things that some other folks might see as too controversial. So I was wondering if you could sort of explain how you get the strength or what drives you to speak your mind freely, and how do you see that connecting with the labor movement? Like, why should the labor movement be debating these issues?
The number one reason why I feel the way I feel about a lot of issues and outspoken and speak truth to power and all those things is number one, my faith in God. That's the number one thing. But it's something that my father told me a couple years ago. He said, "Son, you have to have a profound trust in the protective care of God," which means that if you are doing the right thing, fighting for the right things, believing in the right things, then you have to trust that God will do his part and protect you from all these other people. Oh man, why Hooker saying this or why he's doing that, why he outspoken, why he won't just be quiet and go along with the get along. Because I have that profound trust in that protective care. But the other reason why, on a more natural level, I was a shop steward beginning in 2007. Really didn't understand a lot about Teamsters politics. Um, Still don't really understand it to this day. But during that time, for 6 years up until 2013, I was one of those people, man. You just follow your leader. Your leader, something that my father taught me because he was in the military, and he always talked about structure. If the general gives you an order, you follow that order. Don't question it. I mean, we in a war. Do what the leader says. Do what the general says in his profession, right? That got down into me because I was around that all my whole life. My father was a soldier in the United States military, 82nd Airborne, and he also was a preacher and a pastor. So you're talking about leadership, structure, father the leader. Whatever the leader says is what you're supposed to do. Don't question it. That got down into me. So 2007, 2013, that's what we did. If our executive board said we're going to go left, we go left. If they said we're going to go right, we're going to go right. No question. And plus, I didn't understand the whole dynamic of Teamsters politics. So I just thought that we just do what we were told. So, we got good at the contract. We were good at fighting for members. And so 2013 happened. There was this contract struggle back then where there was a lot of controversy. And, so again, we went with our leaders. Come to find out, man, the leaders were selling us out. So what do you do? Right? I've always been taught from a little kid, follow the leader. But what happens when the leader is selling you out? What happens the leader is leading you to destruction? What do you do? So I question our leaders. I'll never forget, I came down here 2014 after the contract passed, and I asked them, I said, what are we going to do to fix this issue that we had with our members? Not what are you going to do? What are we going to do? Because I think we have to put ourselves in fixing these issues that we always talk about. Man, they looked at me and told me to go back and tell the members to stop crying, pull their pants up. Man, it did something to me, man. It really just did something to me that I can't really put into words because I trusted these people for years. Man, loved them, you know, followed them. But at that point, I realized that it wasn't about the members anymore. It was about them keeping their positions and really not really fighting back against the IBT or the company. So we started this 623 Lives Matter movement end of 2014, beginning of 2015. Wasn't really about running for office. It was to change the dynamic and the culture of what was going on between the membership and the leaders and how we can fight the company together. No, we kept building and building and building. We ran for delegate in 2016, went to the delegate convention in Vegas, and man, that was another eye opener because here I am as a dues paying member, ranking fowler. I'm at the microphone and I'm speaking on behalf of my members who sent me there, and all I'm getting is boos and screams and yells. And I'm like, hold on a minute, man. I'm a rank and file member. You guys are here because of my dues that I'm paying. And this is how you're treating us? What kind of leader is that? What are we saying? You're saying that we don't have a voice? My dues not only gives me a right to a contract, benefits, working conditions, grievance procedure, it also gives me a voice. To me, that voice is the most important part of the dues process. That's why I pay it. Not just a voice against the company, but a voice within the organization. They didn't see it that way. And that's a big, big problem for me. I have a problem with people telling anybody how to use their voice, right? It's God given. We pay dues, we pay taxes. You have a right to feel the way you feel. I don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with me, but it's a right that I have. And so after that, 2016, my eyes were opened up to a lot more of the Teamsters politics. Very, very nasty. Then you see how they can manipulate people into getting them to do what they want to do because certain people may want to move up. And then all this is happening under the scope of we're supposed to be fighting the company. All this going on, the company wins. So here we go. We run again in 2019 and some things that we had to do to get people to understand that we were the best fit to fight the company. We had to deal with the whole race thing because I am the first African American person to lead this local in over 100 years. There has never been an African American person to do this, so we had to
In
fight that.
Philadelphia is there's a big African American, big black population in
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
absolutely. But for our local, it has never been an African American leader, and so we had to fight that. We addressed it, and that's why we put the whole 623 Lives Matter. We're not going dancing around the issue of race. We're not going to play like we know it's not an issue. Listen, I'm a black man. This is the name of our ticket. What are we going to do? If race is more important than fighting the company, then I'm not your guy. If race is more important than standing up to the RBT if you need to, then I'm not your guy. If race is more important than making sure that your check is right, making sure you get a good contract, making sure that you have a seat at the table, then I'm not your guy because I can't change my color, but I can change the way the company deals with us. I can change the way we organize. I can change the way we engage. I can change the way we fight back. I can't change my race. We're gonna have to deal with that. There's a stereotype about black men. We want money, women, whatever, whatever, whatever. I get all that. But let us prove to you that we don't fit that stereotype. We're here because we're tired of the company busting us up. We're tired of our previous administration not doing enough to fight back. We're tired of not knowing what's going on in our contracts. But if your hangup is my race, then I'm not your guy because UPS doesn't care about what color you are. They're gonna disrespect no matter who you are. So we need to look beyond the race. We're gonna be upfront about it. Let's fight the company together. So we won that election, and we've turned this local around. We're more engaging. We've organized 2 new shops since I've been here, and we've only been here 4 years. So we're getting more people involved. We've just negotiated the best supplement in the history of our local. Got a lot of things for us. Our own grievance panel, more bereavement time. Part timers have more opportunity to go full time. Full timers have more opportunity to move between jobs, job preference. We have a lot of things that we never had before, right? And that's because we set a plan and a vision in place so people could be involved. People can see that, okay, I have my issues with, Hooker, man. I didn't think these guys were experienced enough. People know that when we show up ready to fight. And the company, more importantly, knows that too.
I think if I can jump in, I think that workers instinctively respect and oftentimes crave a leadership of their union that is willing and actually wants to fight for them and is not afraid to go up against the boss. That is not afraid to say, we're the working class. We make this company run, and it's our labor power that makes them the profits. And if they treat us badly, we're going to go on strike. We're going to shut down their enterprise if we need to.
Right.
And we don't need to be kissing ass with the boss. So I think that people, a lot of Teamsters are getting excited by this contract fight, and I imagine have been excited in Local 623 as well by that kind of energy of wanting to stop 25 years of concessions and 25 years of labor management partnerships and get along with the boss at any price necessary and actually fight and that's so urgently needed. And I also wanted to ask about you mentioned that the challenge you're talking about the challenges of being the first Black elected officer in Philadelphia. I mean, I'm inferring from what you're saying that you probably dealt with some racism, some blowback. Also, your slate and the Facebook group is 623 Lives Matter. Was that influenced by Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
Like how do you see? Just I want to make sure that the viewers understand where you're coming from and how fighting for equality can actually strengthen the labor movement, can actually engage more people. Because I think that that's something that we need is to, if the labor movement and if the Teamsters are in the front lines of fighting on every front for any injustice, we oppose. Any fight for equality, we're there with them. I think that would bring a lot of public support and get allies in all sorts of places. So yeah, could you talk about how you see those things, the labor movement and fighting for justice, fighting for equality, coming together?
Well, if you think about it, unions and labor and civil rights, that there's always that adage that they're the same. Civil rights and workers' rights are the same, and they are, right? Unions want what's best for their workers. The civil rights wants what's best for the people. So when you combine those together, they both basically have the same mission statement, right? And so, listen, America is has a problem with race. Always been that way, and you would think that the unions would be different, but it's really not. It's scaled down, and people don't really talk about it. But we need to start having those conversations. When you look at leadership in unions, you don't see too many women, you don't see too many African Americans. It's always middle-aged white males. Why is that? Workers need to be able to identify with their leadership, not only in gender or race, but also culture, class, all these things. It's very difficult since we're talking about UPS for a part-time African American person who makes $17 an hour to identify with a 50-year-old white male leader, right? That's why you have to have some type of diversity within your organization so people can identify with what the message is. Because if I can't identify with you, then I don't even care what you have to say, right? If I know you and I, man, we hang out at the same spots, go to the same churches, go to the same movies, then I'm going to really listen to you because we have some similar interests. When I go to a joint council meeting or a PA conference meeting and you look up at the leadership, nobody on that board looks like me. Nobody. There's no female. There's no African American, and it's not a shot at them. It's just a culture that has been in place for forever. And I think now you're starting to see some really people are trying to change that. And I think this is where the conversations need to be had with the leaders and the members. How can we bridge that gap? And that's why we had our name 623 Lives Matter, because we wanted to bridge that gap between, that old guard mentality, the get along, come along club, and the new age of doing work in the society, in the community, the society, standing up for workers' rights, civil rights, all these things, because the union has to be more than just contracts, pension funds, health and welfare, grievances. We have to do more than that. So workers, especially non-union workers, we want to be a part of the organization.
You came up through the ranks as a inside worker, correct? Could you tell just a little, like how long were you working at UPS before you ran for office, and what job were you doing? Because I know that the inside workers are some of the most exploited. I also know that they're disproportionately, there's a lot more women, a lot more Black folks that work inside. What was your experience like, and how long were you working in the building?
So I started in 1999. We got in office in 2020. So I was the inside person for 20 years. And, the package car driver is the face of the company. The warehouseman, part timer with a backbone, but you don't see us, right? You don't see the people loading the trucks. You don't see the people sorting packages, but everybody sees the driver. And so a lot of our issues were swept under the rug or kept behind closed doors because in the public eyes and UPS eyes, we're not as, I want to say important, but we're not the face of the company. So we're not going to get the glitz and the glamour or the attention as everybody else would. And so it's always been a struggle to for inside workers, especially part timers, to get the notoriety or even the respect of package car driver or feeder guy because no one sees us. And when no one sees you, you feel like you're being left out. And if you look at it, especially in contract talks, part timers have always felt as though they've been left out. That's why if you look at now, they're mobilizing on their own to get what they want outside of what the leaders are doing. They're mobilizing on their own to get what they want, which is a good thing because grassroots organizing is always the best. Bottom up organizing is always the best. And I think they've taken this mantle on to get that respect that other classifications get. So for those 20 years, you can tell the difference between the treatment from the package car guys, feeder guys, and the inside people. Totally different. And that's that whole culture that UPS, presents out there. You guys are the grunts. You guys don't deserve to be out there in the front. You guys are the guys and gals who just do all the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And that's the way they treat their workers. They do put classification versus classification. And then we have to do a better job of understanding that and fighting back against that. We're one union, one family. It's not package car guys versus feeder guys. It's not the Article 223s versus the part timers and Article 224 versus regular package car drivers. No, it's everybody on the same team fighting against the company. And the company, they do this better than anybody. They like to put people against each other because they win that way. So it's always a tough road ahead for the inside people because we don't get that notoriety, but we are important just like every other classification is as well.
And UPS, I mean, inside workers are the majority of the UPS workforce. I think it's over 60 or more percent of UPS employees are part-time or at least inside workers. What are you seeing in terms of part-time workers and full-time workers that are on the inside of the buildings? What are you seeing in terms of them getting mobilized? I know in one of your other interviews, you said that they're uniting in a way you've never seen before. Could you give us some examples about that?
So right now, they have all across this country, they're part timers. They're wearing red on Fridays in this contract fight. They want the company to know that we are standing united against concessions, right? And then they also have this website, Teamsters Mobilize, for part timers. They come on there and they talk about issues. They're on Twitter. That they have a nice social media presence. But just if you watch social media, you see a whole lot more part timers speaking out in their own voice. We've never really seen that before because it's almost if they're waiting for someone to speak for them. They're not waiting anymore. Listen, we want $25 an hour. If we don't get $25 an hour, we're voting no. You never would have heard that before. Now they know their worth because of what happened during this pandemic. The company raised the wages with market rate adjustments. In some areas, 25, $26 an hour. They kept those rates up for 2 years. So now the part timer knows, hold on a minute. If you can pay me 2 years, this wage, you can pay me this starting wage. Don't say you can't because you're already proven that you can.
Right.
They were getting overtime left and right coming in. Hold on, you can't give me a full time job? Yes, you can because I've just worked for the last 2, 3 years, 60, 50 hours a week as a
Yep.
part timer. You can give me this job. So they know they have the power because UPS depended on them so much during this pandemic. They know that they can get what they demand and they deserve now because they've already proven that they can get it. So, and they're mobilizing around that. So, those part timers don't get what they're asking for, and they come out in big numbers. It's really going to get very interesting come August 1st because you can't outvote them if they vote. They got the numbers. So if they're saying, man, you know what, man, I don't like what I'm getting as a part timer, and they stay engaged and they stay together, nobody can outvote them. Nobody.
Well, you mentioned the demand that part timers mobilize, Teamsters mobilize.
Yeah.
Was the demand for 25 an hour starting wage for inside
Mm-hmm.
workers, and I know that there's also a lot of need to address catch up raises
Yes.
for inside workers that have been working a long time and haven't gotten the type of raises that they deserve over the last period of time. Would you recommend that members vote down a contract if it doesn't include a 25 an hour wage for part-timers to start? Or being a former inside worker yourself, what do you think is a fair demand
So
from your perspective?
you cannot not have at least a $21 an hour starting wage. I think anything lower than $21 is going to be an issue. But then again, the catch-up raises. You got to take care of the part-timers that's been here. So if teams to mobilize and that new group wants 25, and then you got the part-timers that's been here and they want catch-up raises, and then neither one of them gets what they want, they're going to vote it down. If either long tenure part-timer, if they don't get what they're looking for, and if the new part-timer doesn't get what they're looking for, then who can outvote them? Because there's this whole thing that part timers don't vote, they don't get engaged. But I think now they're going to vote because now they're paying attention. That now they know that, hey man, we just kept this company running throughout this whole pandemic.
Yep.
No hazard pay, the disrespect, the constant harassment, retaliation. They know that they got to get what they want right now, and this is the most opportune time to get it right now. And if they really stick together and they want 25 an hour, UPS is going to have to give them 25 an hour. They're going to have to because again, if 60%, 70% of your workforce is part-time and they are organized around this issue of catch-up raises and $25 an hour and you don't give it to them, well, what you think going to happen? Because nobody can outvote them if they vote. So that's something they need to think about. And I think that's something that both sides need to think about, the Teamsters and the company. Who can outvote the part timers if they vote? If they want $25 an hour, and the tenured part timers want the catch up raises, who gonna outvote them?
And I think one thing that people don't really understand oftentimes is that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that up until some point in the 80s, UPS like part-time workers and drivers were basically on the same pay scale, the main in terms of hourly wage,
Yeah,
and that it was, a driver might work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. A part-timer might work, 15, 20, 25, 30 a week, but the hourly wage was actually very much similar or the
similar.
same.
Yep, yep.
And then now we see, at least in New York City, part-time workers are hired around 15.50 an hour. And the top, there is no top rate for an inside part-time worker, whereas a driver does have a top rate. And so it's there's sort of another two-tier system.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
tier being the drivers, and another tier being all
Then
these inside
everybody
workers,
else. Yep,
everyone else. Uh,
yep.
do you think that there's any way that the Teamsters in the future or in this contract could start moving back in the direction of leveling out the wages, of actually, having equal pay for comparable work? I understand it's not the same job. A feeder driver, a package car driver, a clerk, a
Mhm.
preloader, a small sort worker, they're all different jobs. But isn't it possible that, the wage rates should be more similar?
I agree with that, and that's going to take a lot of organizing, a lot of internal organizing amongst our members, because we have to get out of this mindset of what other people deserve. We can't put a price tag on what a package car driver makes. Package car driver can't put a price tag on what the preloader makes. Preloader can't put a price tag on what the small sort, clerk, this, that, and the other. We have to get out of doing that because we're actually doing the company's job for them, which is to divide and conquer. We have to get out of our own way and really talk about this one union, one family. Listen, man, if you make $45 an hour, I want you to make $100 an hour. Let's see, can we get you to that $100 an hour? Hey, listen, I'm a part timer. I make $20 an hour. How can we get you closer to that $100 an hour mark? Right? How can we all get to that same goal, regardless of your classification? Because we shouldn't let the classifications divide us. Because again, we're doing the work of the company, and they don't need no help dividing us. If there was a more unified front when it comes to wages, a lot of this stuff wouldn't even be happening. And I think what would have happened from the 80s up until now, if we didn't allow, and I wasn't, I was still in high school and school, so I don't know what happened back then. But if we could somehow get back to that, you will see a lot more unity in the ranks. And I think that really, the company does not want that. They don't want unity. They don't want that because if we all making the same, we're doing work and we're doing this, then it's hard for them to come in and divide us. It's easy for them to come in now because we help them. Oh man, how they gonna come in and make more money than me? Well, how about we get you more money and we'll get them more money? Let's look at that. Everybody deserves more.
Yep.
But that's gonna be a challenge in itself to get everybody on the same page. It can happen, but it's gonna take a lot of organizers, man. It's gonna take a lot.
Yeah. No, I was talking with a part-time worker who's organizing in Brooklyn, and he was expressing a lot of frustration to me, about the lack of both the lack of involvement of part-timers in the practice picketing, but also that, he felt that there wasn't enough outreach happening to the inside workers, through the union structures, that, the inside workers, were still sort of being abandoned in a certain sense.
Yeah.
How do you think, like, getting real nuts and bolts, concrete, how do you think we in the next weeks, we can maximize the outreach to inside workers and draw them into the struggle, help inside workers find their voice, use their voice, take a leadership role in the struggle, make their demands clear, and do what you were saying, demanding the raises that are long overdue for them.
What we have to do is create activities and spaces for our members, particularly our inside people, because they feel abandoned. Like, so what we do here, we have a Unite committee. Each Tuesday, they're at the gates, and it's primarily based on part-time members. Part-time members make up about 75% of my local. So it would be foolish of me not to have part-timers more involved in what goes on, right? So we have this Unite committee, primarily made up of part-time workers. So when everybody comes out of their workspaces, workplaces, when they see people at the gates giving out information, they see themselves. You see what I'm saying? They see somebody they can identify with. They see somebody who loading the truck right next to them. They see somebody who is fighting. They see somebody who's delivering e-reg. They see somebody who is just like them. So now they feel more comfortable talking about the issues that affect them in the workplace because they have that relationship. And that's what we try to build here. Identification and relationships. Let people know who you are. Let people know that you have the same issues they have, and you guys come from the same place. We're part timers, where they treat us as we're the bottom of the barrel. How can we get out of this barrel? So we give them information constantly. Hey, this is when the union meeting is. This is how we plan on fighting a company. This is how you fill out a grievance. This is who your shop steward is. Any issues? Here are the numbers. Here's what's coming down the pipe. We got a rally on the 13th. Our union meetings on the 16th. If you want to get involved, you can be out here with us as well, having good conversations about everyday things, not just about the job. Hey man, did you see this? Did you see that? I mean, how's your family doing? So now we're building up more of a relationship, a family relationship. So it's not going to be a struggle when August 1st gets here and we got to beg people to come out. No, man, I've been talking to Mara for the last year about this strike. I work next to her. I see her when I come out the gate. She gives me a pamphlet that says, "Hey, did you put money away for the strike?" She's been out here for the last year talking about the union meetings. She's been out here for the last year talking about UPS and their harassment. Here's a website where they can show us that what our union is doing. Hey, you can follow us on all social media. Did you know that we had a video game tournament next week? Oh yeah, I bring my family on out to it. All this stuff is to build that activity, that engagement, that participation, so we don't have to fight so much to get people to come out to certain things. So again, we've been doing it for the last 2 years, building that engagement up with our Unite committee because it was very important to us. Being our members are basically part timers, 70% of them. It was very important to us to get them involved because we can't continue to say what part timers don't do. They don't vote, they don't come out. Well, what are we doing as leaders to change that narrative? What are we doing? If you're saying that they won't do it, it's your job to change that.
Right.
So that's why we created all these spaces for them to get involved in. So now it's not what the part timers won't do, it's what the part timers will do. They will vote, they will come out, they will participate, they will be engaged, they will shoot this contract down if they don't get what they're looking for, or they will vote it in if they get what they're looking for. But it all started with us changing that narrative to what they from what they won't do to what they will do. But we had to be that bridge. We had to be that bridge to change that. And so I would just challenge other leaders to do that as well. Be that bridge for your members to change that from what they won't do to what they will do. And that's what we had to do here. And it's been working very, very well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wanted to get back to something like the broader discussion about sort of the role of the labor movement and the Teamsters in broader society. And specifically, I'm thinking about the interview you did, I think last week or something, with Steve Zeltzer. And you're talking about the need for workers to have their own political party, that, that we're in a country, we're in a society where everything is run by the rich. And if tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you're arguing that both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are they're funded by these billionaires, these bankers, these capitalists,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have our own organizations that represent us politically. I was hoping you could elaborate on some of that.
So one of my mentors, Chris Rivera, he talks about it a lot. That the Republicans, they won't give you nothing, right? The Democrats will give you a couple of crumbs. But it's the workers who allow them to have what they have. Both parties don't really understand what it is to be a worker, right? They don't understand the hardships. They don't understand what we have to go through. Now, they talk about it because they want our votes, right? They want us to endorse them. They want our endorsement money. So they're going to say that the right thing so we can sign off on the check, stand with them and say, hey, support me and all this kind of stuff, right? But when it comes down to it, neither party really cares about the working family. They really don't. And you saw that with this whole railroad, strike. The president just came in and said no. The Secretary of Labor at the time, Marty Walsh, no. And as a person who is in the labor movement, man, that hurt. I'm not in the railroad, but whenever you take a person's workers, their ability, the right to strike, man, what kind of slap in the face is that, right? And I get it, the country and it was Christmas time, but in my mind, like, where was all this concern for the worker, for those railroad people? All they wanted was sick time. Where was their concern? That's all they wanted. They wanted some sick time to be with their families if something would have happened. But again, neither party they doesn't care. So what we need to do as workers, we need to really get serious about not depending on Republicans or Democrats to give us what we need. We need to find our own people and either get our own labor back person and put them in office in whatever party or create our own. But it has to be for labor, by labor, with labor's dollars, with labor's hands. It has to be for us, by us, in all aspects of it, in order for us to really get what we are looking to get, because nobody's going to give us anything. I think both parties have showed us that. I mean, look at what Supreme Court is doing right now, affirmative action, and so neither party cares about working class people because that affirmative action stuff, who is that going to affect? Working class people who want to go to college. So we really need to really focus on getting our own candidates, backing them, and going against the billionaires club because you got two parties serving the same master,
You know,
and it ain't us.
what would that look like in terms of politics? Like, I imagine getting rid of some of the anti-labor laws, like Taft
Yeah,
Hartley law, or
yeah.
the
Taft
Taylor
Hartley,
law
the
in New York
Railroad
City.
Act.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, the
all that
Railroad
stuff,
Act.
man. Yeah, all that stuff, man. It would have to be gone because you are handicapping the workers. Those railroad people, those brothers and sisters, they were handicapped. Now, let's say August 1st get here and this strike goes on for a week or two. Now I know that we fall under the Taft Hartley Act, right? But what's to say old man Biden ain't gonna come in and say, yo, man, y'all gotta get back to work. What's to say that he won't? Because UPS, we move a lot of work. 6% of the GDP. That's a lot of packages. That's a lot of volume. That's a lot of work. Is he gonna come in and say, hey man, y'all gotta get this thing together and come on in? I hope he wouldn't do that. But they just showed that they would with the railroad people. And I get it, it's two different acts. I get all that. But who says that you had to step in? It doesn't say that you have to. It just says that it's there. And you may if you want to, but you don't have to. You don't have to interfere with workers. Workers are fighting for more. They're fighting for better conditions. Those workers were fighting for sick time. They were fighting for sick time. Just think about that. Sick time after what has happened with the pandemic. No, y'all can't go on strike because the economy is Christmas time. Man, listen, we kept this country running throughout the whole pandemic. You think we care about Christmas? Where's our Christmas? Where's our Santa Claus at? All we want is some sick time. but they didn't care, man. And so we really need to get serious about this. And I know it's not going to happen overnight. I know it's going to take some time, but it has to be some conversations. It has to be some meetings. It has to be some people who are really serious about having a workers' party, or at the very least, having our own candidates from labor, from unions, come up through the grind, not people who can be bought off by the Democrats or the Republicans or the billionaires. We're going to vote for you to be our spokesman in whatever party it is. You have to stick to our agenda. If you don't, then you're out of there. But
Yeah.
we got to start getting really serious about doing one of those two things. We have to. Because if not, man, the Democrats or the Republicans, man, they're just gonna keep just kicking us on down the road, man. And we mean nothing to neither one of them. They keep proving that over and over again. We mean nothing to neither one of them.
And you're talking about the way that the two parties work, and you're also mentioning some of the Supreme Court rulings.
Yeah.
I think the Supreme Court was ruling, all sorts of ruling against students, getting student loan debt
There you go.
forgiveness. I think they've been ruling, against reproductive rights was a huge thing last year. Against trans people, like a whole bunch of civil rights issues, just general rights, infringing, lessening the rights that the population has, that the working class has.
Yeah.
I also wanted to bring up one other thing, which I think doesn't always get talked about. And, I know some Teamster brothers and sisters are not going to like this. They're going to say, oh, this is controversial. This is lefty. But I think that's the role of the police as well. And I was thinking about this with how it intersects with our conversation. And I was also thinking about I think a really good example is one, the way that Teamsters responded after George Floyd was killed, and the strike for Black Lives, which Teamsters participated in, and there was actually, I think there was a protest at the Foster Avenue and maybe
Yeah.
a couple other buildings in New York, and I don't know, probably a whole bunch of different places across the country. Like there was the workers' strike back. But then I'm also thinking about how the police interact with the labor movement, and I'm thinking about the union siblings in Pawtucket, Rhode Island,
Yeah.
local
Yeah.
25251, who are on strike. I think the DHL workers, and they basically got brutalized.
Yeah, they
The
did.
police literally went in and started clubbing and arresting people, and I think the one of the business agents
Yep.
injured or got a wrist broken or something.
It's
And
real.
so I just want to think about, raise that question of like, how do we as the labor movement, I don't know, how do we respond to these kind of injustices when the police start, brutalize a person of color or a white person unjustly, or when they attack the labor movement, when they attack picket lines, because I know there are a lot of people that say police, they're trying to do a good job, but what happens when the job of the police, the orders that they're given are to keep production moving? We have a strike,
Yeah.
and their job is to getting the scabs in, and they come to the picket line. Are they going to be with us, or are they going to be
Be with the
helping out the
bosses.
company?
Yeah. Well, you know what? That is a very interesting question, because anything that has to do with any type of race issue, especially in the Teamsters, it's always going to be hit or miss, because we have a lot of members and they're very outspoken about a lot of things. Black Lives Matter, the LGBTQ movement, trans movement, Hispanic caucus, those caucuses and movements, the Teamsters. And I'm not gonna lie, I know it's a very delicate situation, because when you talk about Black Lives Matter, the first thing a lot of people, especially in the teams, is, well, all lives matter. Well, all lives can't matter if Black lives don't matter, right? Right. But it's hard to articulate that message, because a lot of our members, they don't know the struggle or what it's like to be a African American person living in America. They don't know what it's like to, and I can tell you from my experience growing up in the South, They don't know what it's like to come out of a church and have the Ku Klux Klan surrounding your bus when you're just trying to get home. That a lot of people don't understand what that looks like. I live that. You don't know how many times you get called the N word or monkey or even in your own organization, right? Now, here I am, the principal officer of the largest Teamster Local in Philadelphia. And in some circles, in the Teamsters, they still consider me as look at that monkey over there. Look at that N word. Now I'm the principal officer. It doesn't matter because that dynamic is still here. It's still in America, still in the Teamsters, whatever the case may be. So a lot of times when you have these movements, the Teamsters don't know how to respond to that because they still see us as a certain way, right? And again, that's why we need to have conversations like this throughout our organization, throughout other unions, so we can move forward and stop thinking that we're second class citizens because I don't have the same sexuality as you, or I'm a black person, or I'm a Latino person, or whatever the case may be. Listen, people have a right to choose who they love, who they don't love, who they worship, who they don't want to worship. That's the beauty of being in America, right? But we have to be open to that, especially as a union. We can't bash the company for being for being hostile and not respecting our workers, our members' rights. And then we as an organization, we turn around and do the same thing that we're blaming the company for doing. That's a conversation, man, that I would love to have with a lot of people in this organization because we have to move forward. We have to embrace everybody's culture, everybody's creed and where they come from. We have to embrace that in order to move the organization forward. Because one of the things that I heard this comedian say, and it really struck a nerve because I said it to some people, especially when it comes to this Black Lives Matter, and then they couldn't turn around and say all lives matter. So I heard this comedian say that on 9/11, he's going to have a shirt with the planes on it, and it's going to say all buildings matter. And then the crowd was like, "Oh, like man, you can't say that." Well, it's the same principle, right? We're not talking about all buildings on 9/11. We're talking about the World Trade Center. That's what we're talking about. Something bad happened to the World Trade Center on 9/11. Something happened bad to our country on 9/11. Something bad has happened to black people since 1619. Jim Crow, segregation, lynching, slavery. These things happen. In unions, you still have that segregationist mindset. You still have that when it comes to again the trans, the LGBTQ. Man, we don't want to talk to them. They're not Teamsters. How are they not Teamsters? They pay union dues. They have a right to speak their voices. They have a right to speak in their own name. This is not against our white brothers and sisters. This is not against anybody. This is a caucus or a movement that we want to bring everybody in because there's some issues that you don't know about that affects us. There's some issues that the trans people have that I don't know about. There's some issues that our Latino brothers and sisters have that I don't know about. There's some issues that our women's caucus has. Man, they're going through this whole reproductive thing. They're trying to take their reproductive rights. I'm not a woman. That doesn't affect me, but I want to be there to support your struggle because I got daughters. I want to be there to support your struggle. I need you guys to be there to support our struggle. We don't want to keep getting cops' knees on our neck. We want to keep getting shot in our homes and nothing happens. We don't want to keep getting Ahmaud Arbery's, right? The George Floyd's, Breonna Taylor's. We want that stuff to stop happening. But if you continue, oh man, that's just a black issue. No, man, that's a everybody issue. But everybody doesn't see it that way. And that's going to be a conversation that's going to be it has to happen, but I don't think the Teamsters are ready for that conversation, because if you look at a lot of our local leadership, joint council leadership, conference leadership, and even the executive board right now, they're primarily middle-aged white men. And I don't think that's a conversation, number one, that they don't understand. And I'm not saying they don't want to have it, but we're going to have to push them, because in order for us to move forward as an organization, we need to have those conversations on issues that affect all people. Because, listen, again, we all matter. But if one of us are being attacked more aggressively than the other, then all of us can't matter until that group gets their issues addressed, right? And that's trans, LGBTQ, blacks, our Latino brothers and sisters. Everybody has some concerns. Everybody has some issues that need to be addressed and fixed. Because if it's not fixed, then we can't move forward as a society, as a union, or as a community. So that's a really good question, man. And whenever that conversation is taking place, I want to be there, because yeah, race is it's a problem, man. And I wouldn't think there would be a problem in the Teamsters, but man, it is, man. It is. I could tell you some stuff, man, off air that would have you like, man, is that what they really do? Yeah, that's what they really do, man. There's that stereotype. I hate to talk about it, that black men are not smart. They only want one thing, money and women. That's why when we ran for office, what we did to get people really not to focus on the race and the stereotype. Hey man, the salary for this position calls for something, we're gonna take a pay cut. Hey, the bylaws say that we get the union provides a car. We don't want the car.
Did you
We
take
just
a
want to do the work.
did your slate take a pay cut?
Yeah, because again, we were fighting the stereotype and the race. So we had to take everything away from those who may try to use that to their advantage. We're not here for the money. We're not here for the car. We're here because we're tired of UPS and all these employers dominating the worker. That's
Right.
why we're here. Focus on that. So we had to really be strategic about that, because we knew it was going to be an issue. We knew that people were going to focus on that. Oh man, they just want the money. They just want the car. They're not smart enough. Then there's no experience, right? But you just had a previous group, right? There's no engagement, no contract planning, no fight, no nothing. All we want is a chance and an opportunity to show you that we can be better. You guys deserve better. I actually had one person on that ticket told me that no white driver, watch this, no white driver will vote for me. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's such a cynical and I think pessimistic outlook, because I think that one thing that the Black Lives Matter movement showed is that huge numbers of people of all different races saw that police brutality and racism are real issues. They need to be opposed, and that the basic fight for equality and to not have to be in fear of the police or anyone else is a basic human right. It's a basic issue, and it was one of the biggest social movements, maybe the biggest social movement in U.S. history.
Yeah.
And I remember going to some of those protests, and sometimes it was majority black, sometimes it was majority white, sometimes it was a big old mix. And so I think that I think a lot of people, I think the majority of the working class in this country does support a lot of progressive change and does support equality. And we shouldn't let that backward sector make us think that everyone is backwards. You know what I mean? Like there was a Teamster meeting, a membership meeting in 804 last year, right after the Dobbs decision, after Roe v. Wade was basically overturned, and the right to have an abortion was overturned. And the women's committee of local 804 got up in the front of the meeting, and a bunch of, it was probably about 7, 8, 9 of them. They got up and they presented to the whole membership what was happening, what they were facing, what their daughters and others were facing. And at the end of it, they got a standing ovation. People really connected with that. I think there's a false conception in the labor movement. And, I've only been a Teamster for 2 years, so take it for what it's worth. I understand I'm a newbie, but I think there's a false conception that the labor movement should only focus on the contract. Anything else is divisive. But I think that plays into the boss's hand, because then what happens? Then the media and, the UPS bosses and every other boss can very easily say, hey, these guys, they don't care about you. They just care about their own money. That's what they care. Teamsters only care about Teamsters. You shouldn't show up to their picket line because they don't give a darn about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you have the opposite happening, when you have Teamsters leading, or any union leading, and saying, we're fighting not just for ourselves, we're fighting for the whole working class. I think that's, we're fighting against any kind of injustice. That has the potential to inspire millions of people. That has the potential to get people knocking on the door saying, I want to be a Teamster. Like, that's something I can be proud of. So we got a lot of discussions to have in the labor movement.
Yeah, we got to do this again. Man, because I really want to have that discussion about race, the culture, and how we can get this organization, among other organizations, to understand that in order for us to move forward, everybody, no matter your race, culture, your creed, we all got to accept everybody for who they are, who they believe, who they love, and let's fight the bosses, because the bosses, they do it. Why shouldn't we?
Brother Hooker, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for your time, and great talking with you.
No problem, brother. Now I got to get back to it, man. I got a meeting down at the Air Hub. Gotta go fight this terrible boss we got, man.
All right. Well, solidarity to you.
I appreciate you, man. I'll talk to you.
All right. Later.
Yep.